I'm Chris McCue, Managing Director at Carr and Project Lead on Como Terraces. Part of the process of creating spaces like these is delving into the history and the discovery of the site, equally talking to all of the neighbours who've been here a long time. We discovered very early on that Frederick McCubbin used to paint his landscapes on the house literally next door for the unique vantage point of what was then the city, but also the views across South Yarra and Richmond. So that was an immediate departure point in the inspiration for colours and textures that in most part drove the landscape response with TCL. The topography is unlike many other in Melbourne, really. It's more like a landscape of Sydney, or we've always likened it to something out of Hong Kong mid-levels, really. So there's a 26-metre level difference between the rear of the site and then stepping down towards the Yarra River and Alexandra Avenue. There's a significant landscape overlay on the site, which is about buildings sitting in landscape, not buildings that dominate landscape. And that was a fantastic starting point for us to work with council, but also to say, we want each of these buildings to sit with their own level and to have aspect past one another and through adjacent buildings. So we're really creating a series of terrace-like forms. The interiors are very much an extension of the thinking of the architecture, where we wanted a series of layered spaces with aspect to view. The material palette, again, is driven from the colours, tones and texture of adjacent landscape or the landscape within the development. The external materiality being bush-hammered concrete and exfoliated concrete render finishes, all earth-toned, are repeated through into the interiors in a slightly different way. With the interior spaces, again, we're dealing with monolithic form with framed elements. In the case of the kitchen island, the slab ends are the same thickness as the wall ends that cap the kitchen, which is the same as the wall thickness that caps the terrace externally. This was about linking to Australian modernist architecture and design. There was a purity in the selection of the travertine and the beautiful natural fissures within the stone that seemed to align to the natural formation of the water's edge of the Yarra, the tone and textures of landscape that, from as long as I can remember, I've associated with McGlash and Everest's Heidi. For the kitchen backfitting, we've lined it in mirror. It's not a new device, but it was one that felt entirely appropriate here to enable you, when you're working at the kitchen bench, to again capture glimpse views of garden, of view of the landscape. And so there's a common thread always in our residential planning, that you're always capturing or framing a view to not just the foreground, but what exists beyond. There's a linearity to the design of both the kitchens and the bathrooms that is highly functional and quite reductionist in its approach. There's no superfluous detail, like storage is extensive, but we just wanted this really pure form. We selected V-ZUG to be part of the project in discussion with the client. They felt right, given their history and lineage, but also how they looked aesthetically to us. We know that they're really good cooking appliances, and with the upgrade of the refresh butler in the main bedroom suite, there's a really unique offering with V-ZUG. Their appliances are almost hidden from view, and they're integrated in the same way that we integrate the refrigeration into the joinery, so everything is seamless. So the architecture at all times is about framing views and creating this picture window to either view landscape or connect with landscape and view. The rammed earth is the closest we can achieve to the colour and texture of the Yarra River, as if the mud and the soil has brought up and defined the envelope for these buildings we're placing within the space. The tones and textures of the buildings, with the heavily rusticated base of the ground floor, are in search of a connection back to the rammed earth, the Yarra River, everything is derived from this one source of connection to site.